Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I wanted to give you some information on this Hatch Act violations oversight hearing that went on today. Of course, it didn't last very long because Kellyanne didn't show up, of course. She was not there, and they subpoenaed her to get her there, and they were not real happy that she didn't show up. So I've got a clip of Jim Jordan's opening statement, and I wanted to play that. And then I'll come back, and I've got some information from before that I want to also give you too. So here we go.
Mr. Chairman, today's hearing is politics, pure politics, orchestrated by a left-wing advocacy organization to silence one of the president's top advisors. CREW was founded by the Democrats' impeachment manager, Norm Eisen. That's right, the guy Jerry Nadler hired to run impeachment for the Judiciary Committee. They targeted Ms. Conway not because it was looking to clean up the government. They targeted Ms. Conway because she's effective. She's effective at holding the press accountable, cutting through the noise to explain President Trump's successes and his vision for our country. CREW knows that attacking a high-profile member of the president's team will get them headlines, help them raise money, cause the administration to spend time and resources responding. CREW filed the complaint with the Office of Special Counsel, and the bureaucrats at OSC were more than happy to run with it. The report produced by Kellyanne Conway was outrageous and unprecedented. During the Obama administration, OSC never made a recommendation to remove White House employee from federal service despite numerous Hatch Act violations. And when OSC did flag this unprecedented recommendation for the White House, OSC only gave the White House 16 hours, that's right, just overnight, to respond. The items OSC flagged as problematic are ridiculous. Ms. Conway said that Vice President Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders are two old white career politicians. She said Senator Warren was lying about her ethnicity and appropriating somebody else's heritage. She suggested that Congressman O'Rourke does not think that women running are good enough to be president. And she said that Senator Bernie Sanders has ideas that are, quote, terrible for America. Frankly, I think a lot of Americans would agree with Ms. Conway's statements. But whether you agree or disagree with those statements, it does not change the fact that they are Ms. Conway's honest opinions, and she has every right to share her opinions. Democrats on this committee are more than happy to use the OSC report to attack Ms. Conway and, of course, the president. And this is just yet another example of the committee, as I said, being used for politics. We had Special Counsel Henry Kerner testify for several hours detailing every fact about his report. This hearing today is solely for the purpose of creating theater, political theater, and advancing your partisan narrative about the administration. Mr. Chairman, you've said the administration is engaged in a cover-up from the top on all the investigations. What you fail to say, however, is this administration has produced over 110,000 pages of documents to this committee and made available all kinds of witnesses for transcribed interviews. With the sort of rhetoric you've been using about the administration, do you really think Ms. Conway thought she'd get a fair hearing here today? I don't think anyone's surprised that Ms. Conway decided to spend her afternoon doing her job on behalf of the American taxpayers rather than subjecting herself to a classic Washington political theater committee hearing. And to what end? This effort does nothing to improve the lives of everyday American, does nothing to fix the crisis at the border, rein in the opioid epidemic, or bring down drug prices. This committee is always strongest when we work together across party lines, but for the past 6 months, Chairman and his Democrat colleagues have chosen instead to take political shots at the president. Let's be clear. Ms. Conway's job is to advise the president and serve as a media surrogate to keep the American people apprised of the administration's views and action. This role is necessarily political and involves her answering questions about the state of politics in America. To suggest that in carrying out her duties, she ran afoul of the law is an attack on her First Amendment liberties. What we learned from Special Counsel Kerner 2 weeks ago is that he was upset that Ms. Conway did not stop everything she was doing, rearrange the way her job, and be subject to a bureaucratic gag order pursuant to his office's overly broad interpretation of the Hatch Act. If we allow the Hatch Act to be interpreted the way this OSC wants, it would have a chilling effect on executive branch employees that would silence both Republicans and Democrats for decades to come. I know that my colleagues and I would be amenable to a discussion about legislation that would clarify the bounds of the Hatch Act, That actually was brought up in our hearing when we had Mr. Kerner here. But we are not amenable to this overly broad use to attempt to silence a senior presidential advisor like we are witnessing this afternoon. I yield back.
Now, if you remember when it all came out that the Office of Special Counsel wanted Trump to fire her for her Hatch Act violations, and we went through that report. Remember the video I've got. If you're not aware of that, you might want to go watch this first, because Henry Kerner was actually at another oversight hearing that happened 2 weeks ago. And I don't know why I missed it, and I should have reported on it then, but I didn't. But that one, was really interesting. Now, I watched the first couple hours. I have not watched it all because it's 6 hours long. And, the first few hours, you watch it and you just try to go really fast past the Democrats and what they're saying. And it just was never fast enough, it seemed like. But there were some very good things that the Republicans said. In fact, Mark Meadows had a really good exchange going on, and he put out some very interesting and important information. So let me play that clip for you, and then I'll come back again.
Hatch Act violation. If you look at what the Hatch Act is all about, it's about protecting federal employees. We're not doing any of that here today. In fact, we're setting a dangerous course where we're going to bring in every federal employee that has a Hatch Act violation when we are going to go and put a subpoena and put them on trial right here before Congress. It is wrong, Mr. Chairman. And I can tell you that if you look at what the Hatch Act is all about, it is not about Kellyanne Conway and her speech. Because if we're going to have the same standard, let me just tell you, there is ethical complaints about every single member of Congress that does some kind of TV hit here in the Capitol where they start to talk about it. Mr. Swalwell, Mr. Schiff, if we're going to use the same standard, they are violating, indeed would be violating the very rules of this House. And I can tell you that as we start to look at this is a... No, I will not yield. You'll have time in opposition. I'm sure that the chairman will allow you to do that. And here's what is troubling, Mr. Chairman. As we start to look at this subpoena, we have one standard for Kellyanne Conway and another standard for everybody else. And so if you're going to subpoena people, let's subpoena Samantha Powers. Let's make sure she comes in, because you know what I have? I've got emails on her official account where she was going after Donald Trump while she was working for our government, and indeed at the same time was unmasking individuals. So if we want to hold people accountable, let's do it with the same standard, because I don't think it's right to hold her to a different standard.
Gentleman,
I will to my friend.
Let me be
not
clear.
to suggest the other person was not my friend.
Yeah, thanks a whole heck of a lot, Mr. Meadows.
Let me be clear. I think that we have gotten to a point, sadly, where disobeying the law is okay.
But this is not reclaiming
yes,
my time.
Yes, it is.
Reclaiming my time. It is my time. Reclaiming my time.
I
can promise you that paragraph E gives a waiver. So I want to hear from Mr. Kerner. Who gets a waiver? Because you know what? When you go out and you state the fact, that is not political campaigning. She's not asking for contributions. She's not asking for anything other than, she's not even campaigning. She has a microphone stuck in her face and she is responding. You've done the same thing, Mr. Chairman. And so I would just say, let's be careful about the standard we're about to hold. I'll yield to the gentleman from Ohio.
This is one more example of the Democrats' obsession with going after this president. You got to go back. Remember how this committee started this Congress? Who was the first announced witness of the entire 116th Congress? Who was it? Michael Cohen.
That is not true.
Michael Cohen, the first announced witness, their first big hearing. Who do they bring in front of this committee? Who do they bring in front of the Congress? Who do they bring in front? A guy who is a convicted liar who sits in prison today. First big hearing. No, I'm not. It's my time. You're out of order.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I got 2 minutes and 58 seconds.
I'm going to hold it. Let's hold it real quick.
Wait.
Freeze the time. Freeze the time.
No, I don't freeze my time. I'd have to yield my time to you, and I'm not doing that. Are you asking me to yield your time?
I'm asking you to yield.
I'll yield my time. It's at 2:58.
And I don't want to take anything away from you.
I
The reason why
appreciate that.
you're hearing that is the first hearing was with regard to drugs. Remember?
Not your first announced hearing.
Insulin.
You got to listen to what I said.
Yeah, well, then don't be funny with the words.
I'm not. I said exactly what I meant.
But don't put it out there. There's things that are not accurate. It's not accurate.
What are you saying?
You act like the lady.
Do you wish? It's my time, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
Do you wish that you hadn't announced Mr. Cohen as your first announced witness? Is that what you're saying?
Oh God.
All I'm saying is your first announced witness, your first big hearing, is a guy who sits in prison for lying to Congress. And when he came here, he lied again. And now today, the Democrats, instead of focusing on issues that matter to Americans, they want to focus on Kellyanne Conway's tweets. That's the obsession you have with going after this president. Mr. Meadows is right. In fact, I'll yield back time to Mr. Meadows. We got 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Chairman, here is my concern. We are going down a downward spiral on something that does not have to happen. We've got Mr. Kerner here who is usurping the authority granted to OPM. Now, we've, in a bipartisan way, have been talking about OPM and the importance of OPM, and yet we're allowing this committee to usurp the authority of OPM. He doesn't even have the authority to write the guidance, and yet we're going to bring them in here for a subpoena. I tell you, I have studied this. You go back to 1939. You go back to the 1990s when they amended this bill the last time. Let me just tell you, it has nothing to do with what this hearing is about today. It has everything to do with not coercing federal employees, not giving them special treatment because they're of one party or another. This is a chilling effect on free speech. It is a direct attack on this president. It's a direct attack on Kellyanne Conway. And quite frankly, we're better than this, Mr. Chairman. We're better than this. And if you want to subpoena her, let's go ahead and add Samantha Powers to it. Because there are she did a Peter Strzok kind of back and forth, trashing this president. At the same time, she was unmasking those individuals so that they could be surveilled. That is not protected. And that should be addressed as well.
So it did get heated at times. But Mark Meadows put out some very good information, and there were a couple other Republicans who had very good statements as well. There was a Mrs. Miller, I believe, and she did a really good job because she took quotes from Valerie Jarrett and put those out. So I would love to have played them all, but you know, it really is several of them that I thought did a good job. It would make kind of a long video and everything. So I wanted to point those out to you. And also, just in case, you know, you missed this, Kellyanne Conway did do a little segment here on Hannity talking about it and gave her reasoning. If you really read through it all, the Hatch Act violation accusations are kind of crazy because she was trying to explain Trump's policies, and when there were people who stood against those policies, she named names, which I don't understand why that would be a violation. It shouldn't be, because that's her whole purpose. I mean, that's her job, is to explain Trump's policies and his stance on various things. So if she's saying, well, this is what Trump stands for, but you have Biden over here who stands for that, I don't see how that is any violation at all. So anyway, and if you listen to what they already said, you know, Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows, you already have an idea of what, you know, the situation is. But I wanted to point out something else that I found out about this, is that, you know, Jim Jordan did mention it in his opening statement, and here's who he mentioned: Crew. Now, for those of you who have been around my channel for a while, you've heard me talk about this document a zillion times, because this is a document by David Brock and his Media Matters organization. And this document came out at the same time Trump was being inaugurated. Okay, so anything in this is from back then, January of 2017. I mean, it was like the very same day. They had this little shindig, this little private get-together, and it happened, I think it was 3 days long or something, right at the same time. I mean, one of the days was the inauguration day. So they were having this planning session, or, plotting session, actually. But anyway, they have several different organizations, and this document goes through, it's 49 pages long, and it has the different organizations that they were going to work through. So Media Matters is kind of like the umbrella, and under them they have several different things, and one of them is Crew. So that's what Jim Jordan was talking about, Crew. Well, they call it a nonpartisan watchdog against government corruption, but it is really just totally left-wing. I mean, totally left-wing. But they, present themselves as a 503c corporation, nonprofit corporation. So that's how things work, I guess. They're not supposed to be partisan, but they are. Because I went through this document, they posted a few things. All of the people they were discussing about how they had done their hit jobs on them, because that's kind of what they were doing, is boasting. They boast about all the hit jobs they've been doing, and they were all Republicans except for one. So, and I think the reason they did a hit job on him was because that wasn't the Democratic candidate they wanted to win. So they knocked him out in the primaries so they could get their person in. That's what I think. And back just a little bit, let me go there. I want to show you that they did a hit job on Lugar, Richard Lugar, who is a senator in Indiana. And so by delivering a major research hit against popular incumbent Senator Richard Lugar, he had not lived in the state for 35 years and had improperly charged taxpayers for hotel stays. American Bridge is another one of their organizations, helped to open the door for outspoken extremist Richard Murdoch to defeat Lugar in the GOP primary. Murdoch was as extreme as expected during the general election, most notably claiming pregnancy from rape was something that God intended. Well, if you watch the whole thing, that's really not what Richard Murdoch was saying. It's not what he meant. He's just saying that if women get pregnant, from a rape, maybe don't blame the baby. It's not the baby's fault. And so it's not a reason to kill the child because of that. And that's really what his stance was. Well, they took it all out of context and everything. And so they got him. See, they took out Lugar, who was an incumbent. I mean, he really was pretty popular, and he actually had done a lot in, as a senator. And so they took him out. That paved the way for Richard Murdoch, who, again, they consider extremist because he actually believes in the right to life, and they don't like that. And then, it just opened the door, and that's how Joe Donnelly got in there. So Murdoch was defeated. Joe Donnelly stepped in, and then Joe became a puppet for the rest of the Democrats. I mean, you've probably heard me talk about Joe Donnelly before because he's actually from around this area, but he started out as a Catholic Democrat, and he actually was someone who tried to adhere to his faith. So he was really a centrist when he became a senator. And then he became a senator, and yeah, he was one of the swing votes for Obamacare, by the way, because he swore up and down as long as it had anything in there about, the A word, he would never vote for it. Well, it came down to it, and his party put pressure on him, and he caved. So, yeah. Anyway, but that's what happened. I had to point that out because, I'm from Indiana, and it just was very interesting that they did that. And again, American Bridge is another one of their organizations. There's like 5 or 6 of them, I think, mentioned here. But Crew is the one that Jim Jordan was speaking about. And this is what they do. Crew will be the leading nonpartisan ethics watchdog group in a period of crisis, with a president and administration that present possible conflicts of interest and ethical problems on an unprecedented scale. Keep in mind the timing of this. This was while Trump was being inaugurated. He hadn't done anything as president yet. But this is what they were saying. So they were setting it up before he even became president. I mean, It really is. This whole document just infuriates me when I read it. But crew will demand ethical conduct from the administration. Too bad they didn't do that for Obama, huh? And all parts of government expose improper influence from powerful interests and ensure accountability when the administration and others shirk ethical standards, rules, and laws. See, they see themselves as, this watchdog group, and that they're supposed to be the people who dictate what is real and what is not, what's ethical and what isn't. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, they keep calling themselves nonpartisan, but it really is not. Now, they say the nonpartisan coalition that has driven good government reform for decades now finds itself outgunned, which meant Judicial Watch, if you look at the next line, Judicial Watch was kicking their butts. So, woohoo, you go, Judicial Watch. The most frequently cited conservative watchdog organization. See, they're nonpartisan, but Judicial Watch is conservative watchdog group. They are just such hypocrites. Oh, they are in no way nonpartisan. No way, shape, or form. Judicial Watch is much more nonpartisan than they are. Anyway, they're pointing at Judicial Watch and saying they has a $30 million annual budget. It consistently caused problems for President Obama and Secretary Clinton through aggressive Freedom of Information Act litigation and other lawsuits and a steady stream of reports and press outreach. Gee, they were putting the truth out to the people. Now, I want you to stop for a minute here. Remember this crew, people. This is what they're supposed to be doing. But have you seen FOIA requests come out exposing things the Trump administration has been doing? I mean, with Obama and Clinton, there were all kinds of FOIA requests they were getting and they were putting out, and we got all this documentation. But I don't really recall seeing too many FOIA requests that were exposing the corruption in, the Trump administration. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just haven't seen them, or maybe I forgot. Sometimes that happens. But it just seems kind of odd. And they're Judicial Watch wannabes, is what they are, except they want to do it for the liberals and the Democrats. So, Donald Trump presents conflicts of interest and possible. I mean, remember, this is on his inauguration day, they're saying this. And possible ethical problems on an unprecedented scale, and special interests are pushing to influence both parties in Congress. Yet Judicial Watch and similar groups like Cause of Action and the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust, FACT, okay, you wonder why they were so upset about Whitaker when he got in there as the acting AG? This is why. See, they already knew about FACT. They already had FACT on their radar, and they were hopping mad about it because it was exposing stuff about the Democrats that they didn't want exposed. Now, I'm not saying that FACT only exposes, and Judicial Watch too. They don't just expose Democrats. This whole thing with the deep state and everything, it is so much deeper. It is not political, really, because we've got people from both parties that have been part of all of this. And especially when all this Epstein stuff comes out, we're going to start seeing that it's really not party oriented, that there were powers that be above that were manipulating people on both sides. And it just so happens that most of the Democrats decided to play along. And a lot of the Republicans just said, not going to do this. I remember hearing Dan Quayle speak one time after he was vice president. And I believe that he quit because of that kind of pressure, that he was being pressured to do things that he disagreed with. And he saw that if he continued on, that would be the only thing that he'd be able to do. Either he had to cave to him or he couldn't continue on. And so he stepped out of politics because of it. So that's, what he said at the time. And now that I see all this, I think he probably was right. I think this was what he was fighting. Anyway, so they go on and they say, responding to this crisis. Oh, it's a crisis. He hasn't even become president yet, and it's a crisis. Requires an ethics watchdog with the credibility, resources, and willingness to hold Trump and his administration accountable. Bolstered by bipartisan board leadership. Yeah, bipartisan. What? Are they going to do the same thing where they get one person who claims they're a Republican and then they say, ooh, see, it's bipartisan. Ugh. And a winning record, even in the face of partisan gridlock. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, which is what CREW stands for, is positioned for this fight. Now is the time to scale. Now, if you remember back here, when it first started, it said that it was, established in 2003. So it's been around. I'm telling you, they didn't just come up with this right away. This has been in the planning for a long time, just like another plan that I know of. So, we just haven't been aware of it because it's been going on behind the scenes. Now things are just coming out so we can all start to see it. So their overarching strategy. CREW knows how to use litigation, legal complaints, research, and press outreach to get results. We must significantly ramp up to fill the gap in serious ethics analysis and legal accountability for the new president and the rest of the government. Donald Trump brings with him massive global conflicts of interest and an apparent disregard for the traditions and rules aimed at protecting the government from improper influence. Yeah, okay. I mean, they say this with a straight face. It really is like being in an alternate universe. To combat this coming ethics crisis, see, they're making it up because this was not the situation. They're saying, well, it's possible it could be. And so we're going to do this so that when all this bad stuff happens, when the crisis happens, we're ready. They created the crisis. They really did. This whole Media Matters thing, when you read through it, they created the crisis. So CREW will significantly enhance our capabilities to monitor conflicts of interest and executive branch ethics, use FOIA to effectively keep tabs on the activities of the administration and federal agencies, and take legal action, including active litigation, to bring about accountability when the law is broken. It doesn't matter if the law is broken. They have thrown that out the window because they can't catch Trump breaking the law. He hasn't broken the law. He makes sure that everything he does is perfectly legal. And he's doing it for a reason because he knows these people are sitting there like vultures just waiting for him to do something wrong. And so, he's trying to make sure everything is above board and all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. CREW is not aiming to imitate Judicial Watch. Oh, yeah, they are. They're wannabes. They'll never be as good as Judicial Watch, but rather will establish itself as a credible but aggressive, nonpartisan, there's that nonpartisan again, watchdog seeking accountability for ethical lapses and improper influence in the new administration. We welcome groups like Judicial Watch to join us in holding this administration accountable. Well, I got news for you. I wish you would have been doing that back in Obama's administration. Top outcomes. If CREW is successful in causing Trump to behave ethically, I mean, we're going to put him in his place. We're going to make him behave ethically. It will help protect the country from scandal and disastrous policy choices. Again, where were you? You were there, you were established in 2003. Where were you when Obama was in office? There were several scandals and disastrous policy choices. Why weren't you complaining about those, huh? If Trump does not bow to this pressure, see, look at how they phrase this. These people are all about, you will bow to us. We are the power. And if you don't bow to us, we will make you bow. And that's what they're doing. If Trump does not bow to this pressure, CREW will hold him accountable. In the next 4 years, Crew is focused on achieving the following outcomes. Okay, and I've said this one before because this ticks me off. And when you read it, you understand this was when he was being inaugurated. It has been going on now for the entire time. Trump will be afflicted by a steady flow of damaging information, new revelations, and an inability to avoid conflicts issues. That's what their plan has been. That's what they've been doing. And they just are going to go through, if they can't find something that's actually illegal, which they haven't been able to, they make stuff up. And that's what they did with Kellyanne Conway and this whole Hatch Act thing. They took information, they watched her like a hawk, and when she said something, they jumped on it and they put in the complaints. So that's where the complaints originally came from. And that's why Jim Jordan was so ticked, because he knows about this entire organization. He knows the root of it is David Brock and his Media Matters, and they are very left wing. So this whole idea that they're nonpartisan, balderdash. So anyway, it goes on, it talks about they're, going to force the Trump administration to defend illegal conduct in court. I should just say defend conduct in court, because it doesn't matter if it's illegal. They didn't need it to be illegal. They just are tying him up in court, and we're seeing it happen. That's what they're doing. It's not because Trump's doing something wrong. It's because they want to stop him in any way possible. That's what this whole document is about. So, powerful industries and interest groups will see their influence wane. Well, they are seeing their influence wane because Trump is putting the kibosh on them. They're not able to pay off all these members of Congress like they used to be able to. He's cutting off their slush funds and everything. So a lot of stuff is happening, and the Dems aren't happy about it. Dark money will be a political liability in key states. Oh, yes, it will, but it's not going to be for Trump because Trump doesn't get the dark money. Yeah, it's going to be for other people. So, yeah, and here they are boasting about causing the Trump Foundation problems because there was a donation, $25,000 donation to Pam Bondi down in Florida. And, here's their plan. And basically it is nonstop watchdogging. What's really interesting is, I don't know where they said it, but they have like 81 people on staff. That's it. 81 people, and they've caused all of this grief. I mean, they're kind of like little cockroaches everywhere. But, yeah, they're trying to be the liberal Judicial Watch, which I think is funny. They're wannabes. And, of course, the National Rifle Association, they cause problems with that. And they cause problems with the Center for Medical Progress, a group that lied to the IRS about its agenda to attack Double P there. Oh, yes, well... Anyway, yeah, and congressional ethics, of course, we're going to be on anybody. The thing is, if you read earlier in the document, they talk about anyone who supports Trump. Not just Trump, but anyone who supports him. So anyone in Congress who supports Trump has been getting dumped on, and these people are attacking them in lots of ways. So I'm going to leave this down below. The actual page where the Crew document starts is page 27, and it just keeps going through, and you can read it. So, yeah, this originally came from the Washington Free Beacon. They had it posted. So now it's on this Scribd. So, but yeah, that's what they're going to be doing, and that's what they have been doing ever since he became president. This is what they've been doing. So that's why they're attacking Kellyanne Conway, because she's effective. She's very good, and she calls it like it is. So, she puts the truth right out there, and people are not happy about it, especially those people, because the wrongdoers are going to be exposed, but it's not going to be Trump. And the pro bono army, yeah, they have an army of pro bono lawyers that they will just take legal action for just about anything. That's why we're seeing all this litigation. So if you've wondered, this is it. And a lot of these lawyers are doing it pro bono, which means they're not charging anything for it because they are so behind this agenda, this liberal craziness that's going on. So, yeah, and they are top law firms and talented lawyers across the country. Yeah, okay, I've known a few lawyers, not impressed. But if you're a lawyer, be a good lawyer, okay? Be fair, be just, be honest, and that's it. So the crew, and I like the way they put 2020 plan. And remember, this was back in 2017, January 2017 when they did this. So I'll leave this down below. You can look through it and read it yourself, and it will make you very angry, maybe. So yeah, this is how they'll find out. They'll constantly monitor the following indicators to know if we're on track. Here are their indicators, which we already covered. And so, yeah, that's it. Americans deserve light shed on the dark money. They make dark money into more than what it is. I mean, pretty much anything that's given to Republicans is dark money, right? But, oh, no Democrats get dark money. No. And so, yeah, here it's a 501c3 organization. Its budget is $5.8 million. And, that is doubled from 2016. They don't have hardly anything, and they're causing all these problems. Oh, and this says they plan to expand to a staff of at least 38. That must be 38, like the actual staff. And the 81 I saw had to do with the lawyers and the researchers too. So I think that's it. But yeah, if you only have 38 though, and you got 5.8 million, those people are getting paid pretty well. But yeah, and the increased budget will also cover outside legal services, web and social media. This is what they're doing right here. And then there's the leadership. So if you really want to get digging into people, check out this Noah Bookbinder. He's the executive director, and it says down here, he helped manage communications during the confirmation hearings of U.S. Supreme Court Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. So, well, we know which side he's on. But anyway, if you keep going, it has the whole listing here. Those blue boxes are where they're boasting about something they did. So, yeah, and it goes on. So if you want to dig on those people, I guess you can do it. I would rather go on with the other stuff that's happening because so much is happening lately. And we're going to find out all about this whole Mueller thing because he's still on the agenda for Wednesday, even though he's not going to be. And we already know he's not going to testify. They haven't changed it for the committees, so it's still on the schedule. Anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I'll leave all the links down below just like usual. And before I go, remember, check to make sure that you're subscribed because YouTube has majorly been unsubscribing people like crazy. Although they actually monetized the last couple of videos. Of course, it was after they had most of their views. But, this is the battle we're in, and I'm going to do the best I can. Anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.